So Jesus goes to synagogue. Just like you or I would go on a Sunday morning, he would go on the Sabbath, so technically that would be Saturday. And when you go to synagogue, you say prayers, you listen to readings, you listen to somebody expand on the readings from the Bible, much like a sermon. And if a lot of that sounds like what we normally do on any given Sunday, that's exactly why we do it. Turns out the earliest Christians, who were good practicing faithful Jews, took those practices from the synagogue and then just did it on a different day, Sunday, which recognized that Jesus was raised from the dead on a Sunday. So you can imagine Jesus coming into church, so to speak. He had been baptized by John the Baptist. He was fasting in the desert for 40 days. He apparently has a reputation and a following now, and people are kind of excited. Their hometown boy is kind of famous now, and they're looking to see what he might be doing. Now, in any case, the readings for a synagogue would usually begin with something from Torah, the Pentateuch, or the first 5 books of the Bible. These are the laws. It also includes the stories of Exodus and Father Abraham and so on. But it was really important to be studying these laws, these regulations, how the people live to follow God. Now, after the reading of Torah, you would have something called the Haftorah. And that is the readings from like the prophets. Jesus is handed a scroll. Obviously, they're at the Haftarah portion of the morning, and he scrolls to a passage in Isaiah. We don't know if that was part of the reading for that day, or if Jesus kind of rolls to that particular portion because he's about to make a very big statement about himself. We don't know which. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. But you can imagine like this hometown boy, he's famous, he's apparently already performed at least some miracle of note. And you can also imagine the little old church ladies going, "Oh, that Jesus, he reads so nice and so clear. I can actually understand what he's saying. And I remember him when, and he was this big. He was always a nice boy," or something like that. But anyway, Jesus reads from a section in Isaiah that's primarily Isaiah chapter 60, the first couple of verses. And everybody knew that these verses had to deal with Messiah. So Jesus is either selecting them, or this is how it worked out in some sort of sovereign plan of God. But Jesus reads from the prophet Isaiah, who is talking about him. Now, these, like I said, these words were very famous. People already knew that these had to do with Messiah. In the Qumran community, they were the ones behind the Dead Sea Scrolls. They had their teacher of righteousness, kind of a mysterious figure, but he had those words of Isaiah apply to himself. And there were plenty of messianic expectations around this teacher of righteousness. So this is nothing new. Now, you might have noticed that the readings themselves don't exactly match up between Luke's rendition and Isaiah's rendition. We don't totally know exactly why and what Luke has in mind. And in fact, whenever the New Testament quotes the Old Testament, it's almost guaranteed to be very complicated. What I think is happening is that Jesus and then Luke are taking Isaiah 60 and a portion of Isaiah 58 and kind of mashing them together, which was very common for first century Jews to do, in order to make a point about Jesus' identity. Now, what I also love is that Jesus takes it, reads it, and then he goes and sits down, and then he starts expanding on it. He is taking on the posture of a teacher, and everyone is is marveled. There's a sense of excitement. Jesus is about to do something big. Like, they already know this guy, and as it turns out, he had already performed a miracle, so they're wondering what this guy is going to do. And then to end this particular section, they're kind of whispering around like, isn't that Joseph's son? Now, the way that's constructed in Greek is they're expecting a positive answer. That's like asking the question like, hey, kidney stones really hurt, don't they? Well, yeah, you've asked that in a way that it's obvious what you expect the answer to be, and turns out they very much do. Now, as an interesting side note, at this point, we expect that Joseph had already died. So you have not only this sense that, oh, here's our hometown boy and he's famous and God is doing something really special, but hey, we remember Joseph. Like, there's this whole backstory, a whole lifetime for Jesus mixed together in just a few verses. So then that sets the stage. Well, when Jesus sits down, the traditional posture of someone teaching, what is he going to say?